Welcome to Illusion HorrorCon 2025. You are about to hear a recorded panel discussion featuring game designers, writers, and community members from across the tabletop role-playing space. Please note that the views and opinions expressed during these panels are those of the individual panelists and moderators and do not necessarily reflect the views of Illusion Horror and Con, its organizers, sponsors, or partners. These discussions may include mature themes, critical perspectives, and personal experiences related to tabletop role-playing games, horror, and creative work. Listener discretion is advised. Panel topics are intentionally open to the attendees' interpretation. Our moderator and panelists are encouraged to explore the subject freely, share their own experiences, and engage in thoughtful discussion. Time has also been set aside for audience questions and contributions. This recording is part of the Illusion HorrorCon 2025 Untethered Realities. For more information about the convention, upcoming and past events, please visit our website or join us on Discord. And now, let's begin the panel.
Hello, everybody. It's a wonderful day at the Illusion Horror and Con. My name is Bear Winters. I am here to help moderate the panel for slot 1.5. And today I have a fantastic group of people with me here today. And we are going to talk a little bit about player-driven horror. So I'm hoping that we have some good discussion, we have some good times, we have a few laughs, everything goes swimmingly, and I think we should start with some introductions. Again, want to say hi. My name is Bear Winters. I'm the creative director at Tapham Systems. I created a game called Project Biomodus. I am working on a couple other games. I also do some illustration. My most recent project was to do monster art for a game called Branch Brothers, published by Onyx Path. And I'm really, really honored to be here again this year to say hi to everybody and talk to everybody. So I'm going to go let you folks introduce yourselves. I think we are going to start with D. Oh, D, I can't hear you.
I had too many ways to mute myself. Hi, I'm Dee. I am a USian, so it's bright outside. I am a game designer and developer and writer, and I have been working on games, lots and lots of horror games and other types of games for many, many years. Did a lot of work. I got my start in Chronicles of Darkness, first edition. So I worked on that stuff with who was it? CCP, who owned the license at the time. Then I worked on a lot of the second editions of Chronicles of Darkness, everything. I have also worked on World of Darkness stuff, none of the 5th edition stuff, but lots of the 20th anniversary stuff. And now was I the lead designer on Curseborn? Matthew, you could correct me if I'm wrong. I think I was.
Well, you were the developer on Curseborn.
Well, there were 3 developers on Curseborn.
I know, it was a very long journey.
Yeah, it was a very long journey. And I think I was the design developer on the game. So yes, there was a lot, but yeah, I did a lot of work on Curseborn as a developer and designer and writer and every other hat you can imagine, marketing, curse boy, everything. And now I am working on the Gloomhaven RPG.
Awesome. Well, welcome. Thank you very much for being here. Matthew,
Yes.
Since you have also had aligned work, how about you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Aligned and sometimes conflicting.
Mm-hmm.
I am Matthew Dawkins, and I have also been working extensively on World of Darkness and Chronicles of Darkness games for I don't know, far too long at this point. Mostly for Onyx Path Publishing, though also for Paradox. And beyond that, and more recently, I have worked on Curseborn. I have worked on The World Below, on Monster Kingdoms, on the various They Came From games, and pertinent to this convention, They Came From Beyond the Grave and They Came From Camp Murder Lake. I've worked on Cult Divinity Lost and Call of Cthulhu. Horror games are very much my natural mode. That is where I am most comfortable writing or developing horror. And yes, it's wonderful to be here.
Great to meet you. Gunilla, how are you? I remember we talked last year, and it's really good to see you again. So
yeah, I'm fine. It's late night here in Sweden. I'm Gunilla Jonsson, and I've written role-playing games for a very, very, very long time. Since the early 80s, I wrote Cult, the original version, and lately I've been working on Swedish versions of Call of Cthulhu. So we've made a Swedish version, and we've made a book about a little Arkhamish town in Sweden, Lund in southern Sweden, the Scandinavian Arkham. And right now, me and my partner, Michael, we are working on a cult campaign to be kickstarted sometime next year.
very cool. Sign me up. I'm down. And
Will
then,
do.
last and certainly not least, Gabe, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Gabriel, Gabe the Herald. I'm an industry beginner compared to these fine folks here. I've been working for Helmgas for the past almost 4 years, I think, on Cult Divinity Lost as a writer and game designer and community social media general dude, I guess. And I've been playing these people's games for the entirety of my lifetime. So everything World of Darkness and Cold and hopefully now I'll be playing Curseborn as well.
Oh yeah,
And
so.
That's it. That's it for me.
I am very much looking forward to Curseborn. That's looking like it's going to be a great game, and you're not alone in feeling like the newbie to the fold here. As I think I said last time, I feel woefully underqualified to be around such great people. So thank you very much. Great to see you all again. So I'm going to give you guys a layup question first, and you can answer this as you so desire, in which order you so like. But basically, I wanted to talk a little bit about. We're talking about player-driven horror. So I would like to know if you've played or worked on a game that has done player-driven horror well, and if you can describe the specific system that makes it good. So I will leave it up to the board, but I would like to hear all of your thoughts on this.
A
I
lot
have
of
several.
contenders for that. Yeah.
I have so many.
Yeah, we were just talking about Wraith, the Oblivion.
Mhm.
I think is the one game that does it really well. And I myself love differently colored dice. So the Hunger dice for the new Vampire and Stress dice for Alien.
Mm.
But I digress.
Which part of Wraith do you think does the horror well? Is it the shadow part or like?
Yeah, the shadow part, especially for player-driven horror.
Mm.
There's a lot of responsibility in the hands of the players to not only embrace their characters but the other players' characters as well.
It's a very good point. Gunnar, have you got any examples that you like?
I like the push and pull of angst.
Okay.
I like the harrowing. I don't think harrowing falls solely on the player's lap. It's also part of the GM's job, but I do like when players get involved. The shadow gets involved. But yeah, I think it's mostly it for Wraith.
Excellent. Anybody else want to contribute what they've played or worked on?
I have worked on plenty of games, but I think I want to call out specifically 10 Candles. So there's a mechanic in 10 Candles that specifically well, first of all, it's completely narrative, and you're kind of there's some dice rolling, but it's really just to kind of see when the scene moves on and what horrible thing happens. But you're always defining the world around you, and the players do that. The players between each scene define a new truth about the world, often encouraged to make it a horrific truth about the world. So they are literally setting themselves up to spook themselves. And the person running the 10 Candles game is really just kind of facilitating this story and letting them kind of come up with ways for their characters to get into terrible situations, and then letting that have a payoff.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No. Please, Matt, you carry on.
I'd add Bluebeard's Bride to that for basically the exact same reason.
Yep.
It is a similarly collaborative storytelling game, which is almost entirely player driven. It's helpful to have a handler, someone who can sometimes provide direction if things are getting a little woolly.
A grave tender.
Yes, indeed. But Bluebeard's Bride is one of those games that's so incredibly rich with atmosphere that if you have player buy-in, my experiences with it have almost been unmatched in terms of coming away from it feeling like everyone has contributed, even if it's just something horrific that has then affected the other players, because everyone is playing the same character, different aspects of the same character. And I know Wraith has already been mentioned. I think it deserves special mention for the particular reason that in the mid-90s, when it was released, the whole idea of a shadow mechanic of another player playing your dark side, for want of a better term, was pretty innovative. There were other games out there with systems like it, but White Wolf of the time was a trad game publisher. This wasn't a small indie game. This was a major release, and it was positioning a new mechanic where the players help define the horror and goad each other on and whittle each other down. And it's often cited as one of those reasons Wraith wasn't as popular as some of the other World of Darkness games, and that is something I completely disagree with. I have a whole soapbox on why Wraith was unpopular, and it wasn't the shadow mechanic, which I think still stands up, and in fact looks pretty antiquated now compared to some of the things like 10 Candles and Bluebeard's Bride, and the way games like Locus by Cobblepath Games do things like trauma and playing with your character's sins, which you build into your character at the very start so that you have almost preordained, not necessarily fates, but hits that are going to slam into your character as the story goes on, and you can trigger those for different players as the game goes on. So Locus is another good one. It's basically Silent Hill, the RPG. But yeah, I think that there's a lot of very good games. Wraith is probably the one with the strongest mechanic that I've worked on in that regard, though I would give a special call out to the very, very simple mechanic that is luck in Call of Cthulhu. And how I think luck is a far superior mechanic to sanity. It is so excellent for building tension and for breaking players. And I don't mean that as a keeper. I mean players doing it like a cat breaking D right now. When a keeper says to a player, do you want to push your luck or do you want to spend any luck? And a player has that decision at that point of, do I spend luck to get the success, or do I accept the failure?
Mm.
And the point at which you can, as a keeper, say, I'm afraid your luck has run out, because it has, is more tangible than you've run out of sanity, in my view.
Yeah.
Because the player was choosing to spend that luck. The player has driven themselves to the point where now it's nothing but the dice roll versus the end. I think it's an incredibly simple currency, but it is probably the strongest part of Call of Cthulhu.
You've got that player, that player will, the I can't remember the bloody word for it, but the choice that they have that ability to make that choice. It's not just in the hands of whoever is narrating the game. I think that's an incredibly powerful thing to hand a player.
Yeah, to the point that I think it dwarfs sanity, to where sanity is now basically just mental hit points, if it wasn't always that. Mm-hmm. Yes, you can certainly add specific mental conditions, deteriorations or what have you. But I think people find it more easy to play a character who's desperate and running out of luck than playing through a variety of different, what Vampire of old would have called derangements.
All right. I'm going to dig into that a little bit because, and Gunilla, I want to get to your opinion as well, but there's just one kind of thing I want to put out to the group. Sanity, is as I think as we've kind of gone along in our time and our understanding of mental health has kind of increased. Sanity and detriments that you can get from losing sanity when you put them on paper seems to have a lot. People experience breaks in sanity in different ways, and so it's difficult to kind of mechanicize those, I think, nowadays. Whereas luck is just so ephemeral. It's maybe that's something that's easier to kind of break into without having to worry about overwriting or over mechanicking it. So I mean, would any of you have a statement along that side? Do you find that something ephemeral like luck is an easier mechanic to write into horror rather than? I
actually like the sanity mechanic in Call of Cthulhu. We've used it a lot with specific horror tables. We made a scenario, for instance, with silent film scenario called the Yellow Movie with a Pastor Carcosa team. And we made a special silent movie Carcosa horror table to help the players and the characters to choose between reactions. How will I react to this kind of madness, this body horror? And they get a little help from the table, but it also helps them to develop their characters in a good way. I think it's not just a game mechanic; it's a character creation mechanic. So it's not just for the storytelling; it's to shape and deform the character in a good way. And in that way, I think both stability in Cult and sanity in Call of Cthulhu has been greatly helpful for me.
Excellent. Was there anything that you wanted to? Because I know we kind of skipped into a side question, but if you do you have any other mechanics in games that you really like that you want to give a shout out to?
Can does have a very nice storytelling mechanic. I think so. That's a very nice game, and I also think that Wraith mentioned here makes for a more rounded experience while sort of developing your characters, as I think contrasting to the modern systems from Swedish Free League, for instance, in Alien, for instance, where I think you you tend to get a little mechanistic at times. You get these kind of escape room stories where you have to handle your resources to see if you get out. And in my opinion, that can get in the way of the horror. It becomes a job to get out of the.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah.
I think you mentioned cult and stability, and I think it is a nice, clean form of mental health loss, if you want to put it like that, or instability, I guess. Because it is simply using, it's powered by the apocalypse-based system, a simple mod, a negative modifier to your dice rolls or what have you, which isn't the most bright and colorful system in the world, but it is incredibly functional. And what I think that is so good for isn't just new players, but for visibility. If I have a one-page character sheet like most people do in Cult, they can very easily look down at their sheet and say, I'm down here on the stability track now, so that means this for me. And that is a prompt for how to play. So yeah, I agree. I really enjoy Alien, but I find it. I've had mixed results from players utilizing the whole fear and loss system, because some people will try to game it, and obviously that's going to happen with every single game. But when there's so many ways of tinkering with it, it kind of loses its fluidity.
It was mechanics versus narrative, right? And I like the idea of stability being just a simple mod, in the sense that we talk about player-driven horror here, but also player-driven consequences of horror. I think move into that as well, because then you're talking about what is scariest for their player when they think about what faculties they want to be impacted. Am I hallucinating? Am I losing control of my limbs? Like if they're describing that as their own fear, then
right. There's a game I have played a couple of times, and it is called The Zone. It was on Kickstarter a while ago, and a friend of mine picked it up, and it's all based on cards. So it's a lot of randomization of like your character and where you're going, but it is a game that kind of simulates Annihilation. I don't know if y'all have seen that movie, but
I
you're
have, and
essentially
I love it.
it's a great movie, right? So it's a game that's designed to kind of simulate that. The idea that you're being sent into a weird zone, nobody knows what's in there, nobody's come out. And you go in and you go to different places in the zone, and the players absolutely 100. There's no GM, there's no anything. The players are defining the horror of that game and making it. And there's prompts for it. There's really nice prompts for it that give you kind of a scene or a location, and then you're just kind of narrating like what you're doing until somebody says, well, that sounds like it's going to be hard for you to do. And now you've got to check and see, can you actually do it? But you mutate and you get mutations and you like turn into something else, and people get to describe all of those things for themselves. And the other players get to describe that for the other players. So you're kind of building this kind of horrific thing until an ending in which you all die and you get to narrate your own death scenes and stuff like that. Or if you fail, somebody else narrates it, right? Like that's the consequences, that somebody else does it. So everybody leans into the horror and the consequence of horror and how people react to it and how their characters are feeling about it and how unstable they are. I really like instability as a term. I like the mechanic for sanity in Call of Cthulhu, but I hate that as a term because it's not really what you're talking about. It's really your fear, your acceptance of what's happening to you, or your denial of what's happening to you. and the push and pull of your ability for your like get control over your hindbrain, or your hindbrain just taking over and dictating everything you do, which isn't really sanity. It's more like this kind of primal stress response. But there's, that would be a shitty mechanic name.
I've got an extra
Primal
point in my
stress
primal
response.
stress response.
Yes.
A stress meter wouldn't be a bad thing. But speaking about Zone, which much like Annihilation has very sort of roadside picnic stalker feel to it, and there is a stalker RPG, but I don't think it mechanizes it quite as well. It's almost completely freeform.
Yeah.
But Alice is Missing by Hunters Entertainment is similar to the Zone in the respect that every player has a turn basically contributing to the narrative of who was Alice, what might have happened to her, and it's an interesting one because it works within the context of what we're discussing here. It's player driven, entirely player driven. There is no GM. But it is not there's no player-driven system, so to speak. Characters don't have stats. There's not a dice roll or anything like that. This is a narrative experience where you receive prompts that are, I'd say, randomly generated. They come from a fairly finite list, but the prompts will go to different players each time you play, and it is up to that player to respond to that prompt in an appropriate and dramatic and interesting way, maybe a horrifying way. And speaking, as you did, Bear, about, I guess, player-driven loss, it's something we've done a lot with in Curseborn and the other story path games, but in particular in Curseborn with your Torments and Damnations, which, to very quickly synopsize, which isn't something I'm very good at.
Do you want me to do it?
I tell you what, you handle Damnations, I'll handle Torments.
Okay.
Go ahead. Do Damnations.
Damnations are essentially a mechanic that is it's a way for you to succumb to a curse that is on you. So it's a big curse. Every little thing is a small curse, but this is this big thing that is always your trouble in your background. So if you were to think in other game terms, it's like you've fallen into your monstrous state, and that is the damnation, but you always choose when that happens.
Yeah, there is a currency in Curseborn called Cursed Dice, and when you bleed through them, or you can bleed them to cast spells, you can bleed them to make big dramatic effects happen. But if you run out of them,
just quickly, can you define what you mean by bleed them?
So you, sorry,
you have people a pool, who aren't familiar with the game system.
So you have a pool 1 to 5 ordinarily cursed dice, and once they have dropped down to 0 by bleeding them down, you succumb to your damnation, which might be turning into a terrible monster or being obliged to use magic for every damn thing. No matter how irresponsible and harmful that might be. But crucially, and again in context of what we're discussing here, it is entirely player-driven. Barring a few minor exceptions, there are no powers that will make you lose cursed dice. There may be 1 or 2, but the preponderance is on the player making the decision to, okay, now I'm ready to do something horrifying. But you might succeed in doing that because you've just bled that cursed dice. You must have done it for a reason. So maybe you get that spell off that you wanted to, you achieve everything you need to do, but now you're going to do something absolutely terrible and have to live with the consequences.
Nice.
So, and Torments are like a minor version of that, where you actually choose what those that sort of damnation, that curse is, but they're very specific to the individual.
Nice.
I have a question because I don't know the cursed dice. I haven't read them. Is it a dice? Is it dice that you add to the dice pool?
They substitute other dice in your dice pool.
Oh,
So it's like different colored dice, and
I'm a fan.
Yeah.
But how do you say a difference from stress dice from Alien that you've had mixed results with? How does it make it bright, the mechanic?
it's less fiddly. There's not as many things that like you either add them or you subtract them, or you see, do you have them? How many do you have? That's it.
And they aren't used in every situation. If there's magic around, if there's monsters around, expect to
Then
use
you
curse
care.
dice. If you're having a chat with someone in a coffee shop,
Doesn't matter.
yeah,
Yeah. They're
less
just there. They're
important.
just part of your dice pool, but they're not doing anything.
Quick question from a watcher here from Cryptic Fish. Isn't there a dread power in Curseborn that antagonists can use to leach curse dice and cause
That's
a PC
the one.
to undergo?
That
Literally
is the one example I was giving.
Okay,
Yep.
perfect.
But yes, you are quite right. Very, very observant.
Yep. Okay, so I do want us to move down to more of the questions, and we actually have another question from a Swiss Army person here that will tie into this next question I want to ask. But also as a side note, 8 hands forever. So
I'm very fond of them.
I love the 8 hands. I'm a big Anansi fan from like Legacy, Changing Breeds, but like the 8 hands are just love them. So the question that I wanted to put to you next is: do you think that putting the responsibility to drive the horror experience on the player takes some of the narrative control out of the GM or narrator's hands, and is that a good or bad thing? And the community question we got, which kind of ties into this, is: do you have any suggestions for keeping folks more player-driven, narrative-focused when they have a tendency to slip into gamifying and getting into the system more to, and Swiss Army person has put here in as a side, more unintentional than due to the desire to play that way. So I guess we can break this question down into a little bit, like player-driven horror in systems where there is a narrator or a games master or a storyteller or something. Does increasing that player driven horror take away from some of the narrative control from that person? Is that a good or bad thing? And how, when we do push into player driven horror, how do we prevent things like gamifying the system? Like, hey, my buddy's my shadow guide, and I'm just going to have him give me a bunch of shadow dice for fun. You know, I can tempt him with a cookie or something to.
I have so many answers to this.
Yeah, me too. Well, go ahead.
Well, first, how do you stop players from gamifying the system? Well, if your players won't stop playing with them. I know people don't like hearing that, and I say that a lot. But if you have problem players, just get rid of them. They'll stop eventually when nobody wants to play with them because they won't stop doing the thing. The other, the before you go that route, which I feel is maybe a nuclear route, I think just agreeing on the tone of the game. I think honestly, personally, player-driven horror, when your players have a narrative impetus to drive horror forward and scare their buddies and be part of the action that creates the horror or freak people out, they're more invested in doing that narratively than mechanically because they want that experience for themselves. So if I want that experience for myself, then I am going to want to give you a cool experience to show you the kind of experience I want back. I have played tons of games that LARPs, the live action games. I am a LARPer, and live action horror games, and a lot of the horror in those games is player driven because a lot of the action, a lot of everything in a LARP is player driven. And when you have player driven horror, if a LARP is mechanizing it, people will try to, mechanize and play with the mechanics, but when it's narrative and there are mechanics otherwise, people will they'll use both the mechanics and the narrative to try to make a horror scene as cool as possible, even
So
for their friends.
I have a clarifying question on that then, because I'm very much more a tabletop person. I'm not as much a LARPer. I
Sure.
tried doing some LARP stuff, and then I realized that for me, a lot of it was being able to kind of imagine a character that wasn't me, and it's very hard
Yeah.
to not be me in a LARP.
Sure. Yeah, it's not for everybody.
So would you say that you see less gamifying of stuff in LARP in general, just because it's more of a
No.
like an in-person acting thing?
It really just depends on the mechanics of the LARP. If the LARP has a lot of mechanics, people will try to gamify it. It just the truth. Even if it doesn't have a lot of mechanics, I've seen people try to gamify purely narrative LARPs, and I'm just like, what are you doing?
It's because some people are insistent on winning.
Yeah.
Right.
And that kind of flies in the face of a lot of horror games.
Does. Yes.
One of the simplest things you can do to handle a player who is gamifying this by, let's say, giving themselves freebies, not succumbing to the horror, is you reward them when they do. And you can do that mechanically. If there's someone who wants to rig the system, well, you award experience as, let's say, an example, when people do things that make their characters suffer, but they gain no experience for when their character is victorious. If you really want to tilt the scales, it doesn't have to be as binary as that. But as a GM, you can tease that just to set the tone for the game. And after they've got the rhythm, people should hopefully get the hang of that.
So would you say that a GM's role in player-driven horror games is more kind of like a shepherd for those players? Because, like, I mean,
or
obviously
a teacher, maybe.
Right.
You're the one to make them make a horror story together to make it work. So if they get out of hand, you help them to form this story.
Yeah.
To create the story together.
Yeah,
and then you can sit back and watch them do it.
Right. Yeah, you're really just giving them prompts and like places, like helping them overcome like scene changes, or writer's block, or we're running out of ideas here for whatever is happening, and so you introduce a new element.
Scene changes is such a simple thing that so many GMs take a very long time to learn, especially in player-driven horror. Because everyone can get very addicted to the sound of their own voice. God knows I do. And the idea of telling your own story can ultimately lead to a sort of everything starting up here but ending up down here because you run out of time or run out of space or run out of ideas. And you can get it in your head that, well, we need to kind of keep playing organically. So where do our characters go next? A GM can just say, and that's the end of the scene. We reprise here. And all of a sudden, there's a fresh injection of energy as the new scene is rolled out for you. So, teacher, but also director.
Yeah.
I
think movie thinking is really good. Thinking scenes, thinking acts. Think, now I have a turning point. Now we move forward.
Well, also that you're setting a pace for the game too, right? Because the more things you introduce, the more twists, turns, scene changes, as you say, you introduce, the less time players have to, wax poetic about their hit backstory or whatever. But some games you want to give players that kind of breathing room where they're talking and they think nothing is going on, and they're just having a conversation, and you let that go on for an amount of time that feels maybe too good to be true, and then you hit them with something unexpectedly, And then the next time they have one of those breaks, you can vary the length of time you give them.
Yeah.
And so using pacing as a tool they're still driving the horror, but you're setting the pace of that horror.
Well, to use the director like analogy, there's a very big difference between directing a horror movie and like an action movie.
Absolutely.
Because you're going to want to set tension as well, and sometimes that might involve slowing down that pace.
Yes.
But I love that idea of it being a director, like to get into that paradigm mindset rather than I have a story to tell and they need to follow the path of this story to its completion. And I think there's it's not just a yes or no. Like in my experience of like between good DMs and bad DMs, they know where they sit on the spectrum of control versus freedom. Because if you have too much freedom, then the players go off and ask a million questions to the goblin NPC, barmaid, instead of going out and finding what happened to the king's son or something.
Yeah, they end up spinning their wheels, and so I think that's totally natural. It's not the player's fault. You just need someone who has an element of control. They don't need complete control. They just need the elements of it. I think they came from the Bard's Quill, which is our Shakespearean they came from, and that may sound completely off tangent here, but they came from the RPG anthology. We introduced soliloquies because it's Shakespearean they came from. And you've got soliloquies and asides and various other theatrical components. And I'm fairly certain in that chapter, we basically say in each scene, a character can have a soliloquy. So this is their chance to talk about their backstory. But only one character can have a soliloquy in a scene. If someone else wants to, they need to hold on to it. And even if they insert it at the most inappropriate moment in the following scene, they've got to wait until that next scene, because if everyone is delivering their chunky backstories at the front of the play, by the time you get to the end of it, you don't care who these people are, but it can be absolutely fantastic. And this especially applies to horror. If you've got 4 players and you've got a one-shot game that's divided into 4 scenes, and one of those players only gets to deliver their backstory in the final scene, on the face of it, that sounds terrible. But in delivery, this is where they can reveal who they were all along, why they've done what they've done, why they've betrayed the rest of the players. And that can carry such a tremendous punch.
Well, yeah, they're getting the thing that's normally reserved for the big bad guy.
Yeah.
The final monologue, That's actually very powerful. Yeah. There is a question in chat from Link the Vampire. How do you best know when to change the scene? Just wait for it to get a bit quiet. What would you? And Gabe, you haven't said anything in a while, so I'm going to throw this at you. What advice would you give for DM storytellers?
I guess it's just a gut feeling you have, but I sit on the far extreme side of giving players freedom to do things. Way on the extreme of this. I like to sit back and I like to set up the scene and let players do their thing. So it's more of if you look at it through the director lens, I just try to visualize the scene in my head and try to capture the frames and see when a good moment shows up, a good dramatic moment. And I guess there's no hard and easy rule to learn and apply here.
I have
it's more of a feeling for me.
Yeah.
It's good.
I think that if you don't want the just it's a feeling, because it is kind of just a feeling answer, then the other answer is take some improv classes. Take some like improv comedy classes or whatever, and they talk a lot about ending a scene, right? Improv is all about like it's not scripted, you're just doing the thing, you're playing off of each other, but you also have to know when that scene has played itself out. Where's the scene going? Where does it end? And the people doing the improv are usually the ones who kind of play it to its end and then know when to end it. There's not usually somebody, sometimes depending, but normally it's not the person directing the improv because that's not happening. So the more you get used to noticing when a scene has come to a natural conclusion, you become more adept at saying, this scene has actually come to a natural conclusion and these people are just kind of filling the space. I'm going to move it forward.
Yeah, I think interesting that you were talking about this, Gabe, because my thoughts go to Cult when I think about how to pace a game.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not always very good at pacing games. I know that. But with Cult, I tend to have a rule in my head that as soon as a player's character does something selfish or harmful, I then start counting down in my head, or I've got a timer or whatever. This scene's going to end in the next couple of minutes because I like the hanging dread of, and Cult almost encourages players to do malevolent, selfish shit because it's a game where your characters are very rarely heroic. They kind of succumb to the mire of the world around them. And so let the other players react to that selfishness, to that harmfulness.
That's a good one.
And then end it, and then we'll pick up a day later or a few hours later or whatever is dramatically appropriate, and we can see some of the repercussions, what has happened following you taking this grave decision. Cult's very nice for that just because it's so baked into the game that everything's so miserable and backstabby, I think.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree.
like the idea of, for more specific scenes you have in mind. So if you expect the players to, I don't know, barge into a ritual, for example, you have a goal in your mind as a GM to see what happens when they do that. So it's more easy if you have the set goal from the get-go. So see what you want to highlight in the scene, and the feeling will be easier to notice. The feeling when you should cut will be easier to notice. So the goal here would be, I want to highlight, and even if you discover this in the middle of the scene as it plays out, the goal here is to see what happens when Dawkins gets the knife and finally has the chance to stab, I don't know, Gunilla, So
Sorry,
you
Gunilla.
push
Hopefully
the scene, you push the scene for that to happen, and you'll know when to cut. So having the horizon you want to get to makes it easier. And I like to have different scenes within scenes. So while we talk, someone's in the other side of the room looking through, I don't know, the murderer's belongings, and cutting between them also is easier to feel instead of focusing solely on our talk or the investigation.
It's very good.
Yeah, and also we talk about player-driven horror. The players should feel this pacing, I think, as well. I mean, if you do it good, they will get the feel of how long scenes do we have in this story? What kind of story do we want to tell? Do we want swift, violent scenes and frequent cuts, or do we want slow and brooding scenes? And I think that's a collaborative effort for everybody to make it the best experience. You have to do it and work as a team, basically.
No, he's very good. I do want us to move on to a couple other topics because we are about middle of our panel right now. I did see a question come up in chat, which I'm going to get to sort of near the end, because I want to kind of keep us on the current flow we're on. But I did see your question, and I will answer it. I will ask it later on. But we're talking about, the expectations of the differences between GM and player-led horror. So the next question I want to ask is kind of how we then expand that to groups, because we have groups of players with varying different views of horror, what their limits are of horror. Like, some people want to be absolutely terrified. Some people are just like, I can't look at spiders. There's a whole gambit of players, and players being, people. So how do we let player-driven horror dance that line while keeping the people who need something a bit more horrific involved, while also balancing that for maybe newer players or more squeamish players to not get overwhelmed? Because role-playing games are generally group activities. Like, how would you go through that ebb and flow? How would you kind of either manage expectations? So, Gabe, go ahead.
I would separate them into two groups.
Yeah.
So the squeamish players can play with other squeamish players, and we can level that, and then the others that want more hardcore things.
So I mean, that's good advice, I think, if you have a plethora of players to choose from. But if your local gaming group is,
you can actually pamper the soft players, and then you go hard on the players who want horror. I mean, trash them, kill them, maim them, take them down into the basement and do horrifying things with them. And those who don't want that, you play nice with them.
So I mean, but there's also, like, I don't know. This might seem a little. I know horror games, we have like a level of expectation. If you're playing a horror game, something bad is going to happen. There's always that expectation, and you can't expect every gaming group to be on board with that. That's fine. Like, it's probably not the game for them. But there are some very sort of real life traumas that can get put into horror. Well, obviously session 0 stuff is going to help weed out some of that thing.
A lot of that talk about what the characters want, who they are, what their background are. When you do that, you get an idea about what should I avoid at all costs.
Safety checks are just responsible. There's obviously a lot of people who say, oh no, getting sensitive about horror, but that's bullshit. I love horror, but that doesn't mean I love all horror movies. Right. There are plenty of horror movies I just don't find interesting, don't find thrilling, or I just find grotesque. And so I won't watch them. And the exact same rule applies to horror role-playing games. So I think it's just a considerate, mature thing to do at the gaming table, to take everyone's thoughts and wishes into account.
So my advice on this is maybe a little, I don't know, avant-garde.
Ooh.
I find that people who tell me that they're squeamish, or that they're, I don't like, horror freaks me out or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, I got you. I'm totally understand, especially player-driven horror, where it's like people are describing things. And so, this person who wants a lot of, intense horror wants to describe a lot of intense horror. And the people who are like, but I don't want to listen to that. So here's the thing. We expect bad things to happen. We expect bad things to happen to our characters, or to other people's characters, or the people we care about. So there's two things you can do. One is, but don't have the bad things happen directly to the squeamish characters. Let them be the heroes, or the unwitting, bystander who has to watch other people get maimed or whatever. Let the bad things happen to the characters who want the really hardcore stuff, and let them kind of experience more personal horror. The other one is let those more squeamish characters describe the horror for the characters who want more horror. Let them be in control of the most gruesome, awful parts because they're not listening to the description. They're not having to think about it and not know what's going to come next. They're devising it themselves.
Mm.
And when they have control over the horror, they're not going to freak themselves out because they're going to choose things that they think will be freaky but aren't their, their lines of this is too much for me.
Mhm.
And then they're also going to try, because if the opposite is true, the person who wants more horror being given to them is then given to the person who doesn't want as much horror with the statement of this person doesn't want as much horror. I want you to have a good time, so you're going to help me have a good time. And so now we're playing into, okay, well, you're going to kid glove me and I'm going to try to go as hard as I can on you. And at first I might be kind of bad at it because I don't really think about horror stuff. But I'm going to try to scare you. I'm going to try to spook you. I'm going to try to gross you out. You want all these things and I'm going to figure out ways to push your buttons. Suddenly this game becomes enjoyable for them because they're absolutely in control of the horror rather than having to experience the horror.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I when I was 19 years old, I think, I was running Vampire the Masquerade at a games club, or wanting to run Vampire the Masquerade at a games club. And I had a group of players lined up, and this was before safety checks were really de rigueur, I guess. But one of the players came up to me just before character creation and said, I just want to mention something I feel is going to be important. I have a fear of blood, and I don't want any references to blood. I don't want thaumaturgy to appear in this game. I don't want blood bonds to appear in this game. And went through the list, basically every permutation of what blood is. And because at first I was trying to negotiate, so that's fine. We don't have to have long, extended feeding scenes. It doesn't have to be gory. But ultimately, what it came down to was this person wanted no blood references in the game whatsoever. Now, at that young, tender storytelling age of mine, and there's still plenty of argument for me doing what I did then, I basically said, I don't think I'm going to be able to run this for you. It's Vampire the Masquerade. It's a game all about blood, etc., etc. So I just didn't run it, and we played something else, and all was well. Now, with the benefit of age and the benefit of running plenty of other games, what I'd probably see that as is a challenge. Can I run? And this is a good way of handling players who may have those hard limits. It's, can I run a horror game that doesn't touch on these things that horrify you, but still tells a compelling story about, in this case, vampires? So can we do feeding and describe it as feeling like the air has been drawn from your lungs? Can we have all of the Tremere be outcast from the city? So that's why there's no blood sorcery or anything like that. You can basically tie this person's prohibitions or peccadillos or whatever they may well have into the story to make them actually feel like this is great. I've actually been listened to, and I'm still getting to play this game I've really always wanted to play. So I think, while I think it is totally valid, if someone puts up lots and lots of limits, you may look at yourself and say, I don't think I'm up to this. And that is a perfectly fine thing to do. Much better than wading in and fucking it all up. And upsetting people. But alternatively, if you have the confidence, the preparedness to do it, just tell a horror story that doesn't touch the things that scare them.
I think that's a good point to make from a GM standpoint, but there's also, like, if you've got a player that's coming to you in confidence and saying, I can't do anything reference wise to blood, that might be a challenge for you. But it's also, you have a lot of players, if it's like a larger player group as well, that may not
Yeah.
understand that and may not wish to engage in that challenge.
Yeah.
And you have to make that call as to whether it's like, this may just not be the game for you, because, you know, I've got 4 other players over here that are gonna want to engage in those mechanics, and they can't. And I don't want to risk your mental health
Mm.
Yep.
for the sake of, you know.
So one of the things that I think is, this is a great panel to talk about it in, and it's something that I have a conversation with, especially in the LARP community, but I don't hear a lot of people talking about it in the like tabletop RPG community, which is player responsibility. Not just players' responsibility for driving the horror or whatever, players' responsibility for helping make sure their fellow players have fun.
Mm-hmm.
But players' responsibility to know what their limits are, to know their own personal, like, I don't want to play a game that involves blood. I don't want to play a horror game at all. Why would I sit at a table? Why would I even go to a table that is about that?
Mm-hmm.
And not saying that this person has heard all these things and really wants to engage, and they shouldn't. That's fine, do that. But they should not walk up to a stranger in a game store, and like, that is about them not having their own player responsibility. You're not actually, like, you're responsible for not introducing things that are going to really upset someone if they know these things are going to really upset them.
Yeah.
It's their responsibility to let you know those things might really upset them. It's also their responsibility, if something does really upset them, that they didn't know was going to upset them, to have a mature conversation about that, and to make a decision for themselves. Hey, I don't know if this game is for me anymore. A lot of people will just keep playing a game that's not for them at all, and that they're not enjoying, and they'll just kind of hate play a game.
We've all done that.
We've all done it, and I don't understand it. Like, just stop playing, go do something else. There's plenty, like, I have stopped playing certain games because I'm like, I don't find joy in it anymore. Go, like, pick up a different hobby. I don't know. I'm not telling you to stop playing role-playing games, but like, there is a player it is not on the GM all the time to manage absolutely everything about the play groups. The players have a responsibility to manage themselves as well.
Mm-hmm.
You are all players in this game. You're all in a group. Hopefully it's your friend, and you can have a compromise and a conversation to get everybody on the right page. But there is a player responsibility to recognize immediately, like, what you said, Matthew, honestly, is maybe a better solution than what I would have done, which has been like, hey, this game isn't for you. So sorry, I'm not running this game for you. Compromise you chose was we're just not going to play this game at all. I still want you to play a game, but we're not going to do this one. That's a valid response, because I don't think this game is for you, and you should have recognized that before you walked up to me. But the compromise is, we'll just play something different.
Yeah.
Okay.
And each group is going to be very independent.
Yes.
But yeah, you do, as a player, have responsibility to protect yourself as well.
Yes.
Like,
I think also that a more common problem as a GM is one player bullying or doing horrible things that one, or oftentimes one or more in the player group, can't stomach, and they can't solve that conflict themselves. And I have to go in as a GM and try to handle it. I think everybody has had that kind of problem.
Yes.
And what to do with the problem player then? I think when it comes to squeamish players and very bloodthirsty players, for me, that's the most common problem. I have someone who is a bit too aggressive and tend to take it out on somebody else who oftentimes he perceives us weak enough to try to bully. And that's always a troublesome position.
Yeah, my answer to that is always to just kick that person out of your group.
Yeah.
Talk to them, and if they don't change their behavior, goodbye.
Yeah.
It's a game, and everybody is spending their own time to enjoy that game and make it as fun as possible. If you're just being a dick, you're wasting everybody's time.
Yeah.
Golden rule: don't be a dickhead. That's in any game you play, horror or otherwise.
I mean, yes, for all the talk of making allowances and so on, I run basically I run a Patreon as a second job at this point, running number of games I do, and given the number of games I'm running and the number of players I'm running for, if someone emerges as disruptive, as causing other people stress, especially if they're causing me stress,
goodbye.
I will chat with them once, and if they don't immediately start showing effort to be more harmonious, I'm not risking my income, but I'm also not risking everyone else's happiness. Right. I don't want to go to a game that I'm dreading because one player is an asshole. I'm just going to. But I think
when we're talking here, we play with a lot of people, but a lot of people play with their friends. And I think for a lot of players, this is a very large and valid problem.
I mean, it is a large and valid problem. I have stopped playing games with my friends because they just couldn't stop being a bully at the table. And then later, because I stopped playing games with them, I realized they were kind of a shit friend, actually. I'm not here to be your therapist, but I don't think people should tolerate and put up with bullies in their life.
No.
And if your friend is being a bully at the table and you talk to them and you're like, hey, you're bullying this other character all the time, and why is that happening? Can we try to make it stop happening? And they're, maybe they have a valid reason where they're like, oh, I had no idea, I didn't think that was bullying behavior, I'm so sorry, and then they change. Great. But maybe they're just like, oh, well, that person is an idiot and they deserve it, or that person, or they need to toughen up, or I'll stop, and then they don't. Like, that person is not, they're not respecting you. They're not respecting that person. Are they really your friend?
Would you tolerate that behavior in any other situation either?
Right. I am always floored by the amount of just absolute abuse we will tolerate from our friends that we would never tolerate in any other situation. And I do it too. I tolerate all sorts of kind of bad behavior from my friends. Until I learned I don't have to tolerate those things, and I can just tell them, hey, stop doing that. And I have fewer friends now, but I have a much richer life.
It's really pertinent to go back to the whole Wraith the Oblivion thing when talking about this, because I think for a lot of World of Darkness fans, this is where that kind of behavior really rears its ugly head. And it's why, despite the fact we're talking about player-driven horror here, horror is a genre where this kind of behavior can manifest itself quite readily. Disrespect for people's boundaries, wanting to goad each other, essentially make each other bristle, trigger each other if you're, going that far. And playing another player's shadow.
Yeah, perfect example.
It is, if you haven't had the right conversations beforehand, if you're not doing regular check-ins, and a regular check-in doesn't need to be some formal sit-down interview. It's just a chat before the game. It's just a chat after the game. You should be having those chats anyway if you get on with each other, one would hope. And to be honest, if you're not, Wraith and having that mechanic in play probably isn't for you, because it's the kind of you're playing someone's id, an evil id, and you want to know that person's also got your back. Their character might not, but the player should.
Yes.
There's a nice dichotomy here as well, because like horror games are very good at exploring fears in general, but also like as we've seen with like therapeutic gaming, which I know on its path have been sponsoring Save Against Fear for years now.
Yes.
Games can be used to help face those fears and develop resistances against those fears by having a character as a proxy. So you can experience what it is to see those things happen to a character without it actually happening to you. And I think that's a very good tool for friend groups, especially if you do have like a friend that doesn't seem to get it. Just removing them from play for a couple of sessions and letting them feel the consequences of not being able to get on board with playing with the group is also kind of telling for them, because if they're like, screw these guys, I'm just not gonna, they're not gonna redeem. But like if they come back to you and say, hey, I really miss gaming with you guys, I want to learn something better, there is a path to redemption for those problem players. I feel.
Oh,
absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that should be encouraged.
Yeah.
But they should not escape the consequences of bad behavior. And you can do that and not have to like end your friendship with them.
Yeah.
Like that's
absolutely. I mean,
that's totally legitimate.
I may be a little more extreme than some other people, but I've also dealt with some, like Matthew. Matthew knows
I'm
very
not one
well.
of these people.
No. Matthew is this person. No, Matthew knows some of the people that I've had to cut out of my life, or knows the stories of the things that have happened. And it's once you do it once, it becomes easier to just go, I don't really need or deserve this kind of treatment. It becomes easier to recognize, and sometimes it's just easy. You just have a conversation and people go, oh man, I'm so sorry. I just had no idea I was having that effect. Lots of people don't mean it.
Just reaching for the double-barreled shotgun on the wall.
Yeah, always.
That was a
literally.
strange decision.
Yeah, literally always. Like, I'm done with you.
So let's I want to get into a bit more of like we've kind of diverged a little bit into kind of player interactions as a whole rather than just kind of player driven content.
Yeah.
So there is a couple of kind of like more generic questions I want to go into, like player based horror, that I'd like to get your opinions on. And we are kind of getting, I think, in our last like 20 minutes or so, getting to be about that point. So I want to spend a little bit of time on this next question. Then I want to do audience questions, because I think we've got another couple of questions that I want to like kind of put in. So we're going to go a little bit more quick fire. Have there been any emergent like horror trends, like over social media or YouTube or anything like that, that you think would make good player-driven horror narratives? Things like, to give you an example, like megalophobia videos, or backrooms liminal space videos. And I know Curseborn has a kind of like a liminal space mechanic. So I've kind of read ahead a little bit there, but like I would like to see it, like if you guys have seen any kind of like, horror is a difficult thing because it seems like it's all kind of been done in various different ways, but I would like to know if you guys have seen any emergent trends, or like some genres of horror that haven't been explored enough in the gaming sense that could be pretty good in the hands of players.
So on the subject of social media, I won't touch on liminalities because we've explored them almost to death in Curseborn, but it's a good effect. But liminal space is a big one. I think, in the realm of social media, we haven't seen enough of things like catfishing and online dating and the backlash, the horror that comes from that. I feel like it's an evolution of the home invasion in a way. It's the betrayal of trust. It's the killer is in the attic already. The call is coming from inside the house. It's the subverted expectation. And social media is a fantastic veil for horror. Everything looks normal. All of your interactions seem to be nice. This person's affirming you, and then you come to meet them, or you come to find out something about them. There was an excellent play on in London that I went to see, which is called The Unfriend. It's based on a true story about these two people. They went on a cruise, and as you do when you go on holiday, sometimes go on vacation, you befriend somebody who's in the same tour group as you, and they got on very well. And did the usual thing of, we'll have to stay in touch afterwards, exchanged emails, didn't expect to hear from this lady again. All of a sudden, she's emailing them saying, I'm going to be in London in a month, could I come and visit? And they thought, yeah, sure. At which point they decided to look her up, and it turned out that she was someone who, well, she was an American, she was coming to London, she had killed 2 of her previous husbands, and this obviously never came up on the cruise. And now
I can't imagine why not.
And they had invited her to stay with them and their children and so on. And so there's this sudden, oh shit, who are we introducing into our home?
Yeah.
The online barrier, the everything looks normal, oh wait, it isn't, I think could really be explored even more in games like Curseborn and Cults, especially. I think that's perfect for it.
So playing on that, and especially the social media, is identity theft. So people who steal, so a real life thing where somebody, a bot account steals your account and starts, messaging your friends and maybe scammers or whatever, right? But like there is a horror like story trope of like, I think the movie that kind of is the best example is Single White Female, where a girl gets a random roommate who just starts to act like her, look like her, dress like her, take her clothes, take her life, right? And people do that and can do that on so many levels, and it's so much easier now to do that kind of, oh yeah, we're friends or we're roommates or whatever, and I'm subsuming your life, and that is horrific. Where your friends start like this person starts isolating you. There's a lot of like abuse horror is horror, and watching stories of kind of this kind of abuse happen to people is awful, and it's honestly good fodder for personal horror where your friends are gaslighting you. Or this one person is gaslighting all your friends, or they're stealing your identity. Your friends have no idea that that's not even you. And you try to tell them and they don't believe you, right?
Yeah.
The not being believed, not being trusted. Everybody thinks you're crazy. Everybody thinks you're just making things up or you're jealous, but genuinely something bad is happening to you. The isolation in that form is a really interesting story, and that is a way for horror and player driven stories when I always love when one player and another player are having an interaction and they know out of character. The players know, but their characters don't, right? And I am telling you a thing and I'm legitimately gaslighting. My character is legitimately gaslighting your character. You literally just watched a horrible thing happen and I'm lying to you and telling you that that's not what happened. And we're enjoying it because we know what's happening, right? It's not happening to the player, it's happening to the character. But it's also very horrific.
You could add in to go on social media impersonation. You could definitely add AI bots into that. It doesn't even have to be a person. Some
correct.
bot account clones you and starts acting like you using algorithms. And then if you want to add in some kind of like supernatural horror, it's like suddenly they start posting pictures to this as you. Like it's pictures of you doing things that you've never done. And family are contacting you to say thank you for the gift that you gave us. Like it's a little strange, but like
give it time,
very well
it will
thought
happen.
out. And they start liking the bot account more than you. Like there's kind of like
sounds like an episode of Black Mirror.
Yeah,
it does.
Like
that's great curse burn fodder, by the way.
Yeah, don't worry, I'm taking notes.
Get that one for free. for free.
You can also reverse it and take away all
Yes.
social media.
Yes.
Take away. We are so dependent on it now. So if you take away all your online activities, all your banking contacts, all your social media, then you become a lot more helpless than you were only 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Yes.
You are
Absolutely.
basically a homeless, helpless tramp.
With
in that
no
case.
presence.
You
will
cease
very
to
quickly
exist,
be
and you
forgotten.
can also play on how you feel that your identity is sort of dissolving, because so much of your identity is locked up in your online existence these days. So I think that's a good, fun thing to play with.
I mean, for I'm sure all of us here, we all have friends that we know in different countries, different areas of the world that we've maybe never met. They're very true friends. They're good people that we like and we respect. And without that presence on the internet, we never would have met them. They'd never know who we are. And social deprivation is just as much a horror as much as any other kind of deprivation, like starvation or survival or exposure to the elements. That's absolutely valid. It's a great point. Yeah, I like that. Gabe, you've been very quiet. I'd like to hear your thoughts.
To circle back to the topic, I feel like we're gonna see a lot of AI horror in the coming years. I feel like some people have already understood that some things today cannot be taken as truth at face value. Right now, we see that with art. A lot of people will use, and that's my political stance. A lot of people will see AI being used for art and think a human did that.
Mm-hmm.
But we're also seeing how it's escalating to real lifelike videos and images and all that. And my guess is it won't be long until we see movies about that. Just like we see movies in the past, like in the turn of the millennium, when people were super afraid of the technology and all that. And that's my guess for the trends that we'll make into the media and our games.
Mm-hmm.
I already have a healthy fear of AI from watching Terminator for most of my life. Like, it doesn't. But I was not prepared for Skynet to not be a military AI, and instead our version of Skynet is a horrific video of Will Smith eating spaghetti, and then that becoming like realistic videos within 3 years. Like, I don't know if you guys remember that AI video of Will Smith eating spaghetti that was first released.
I can't say I saw it.
It was basically a demonstration of like text to video generation. And it was like in one of the first like AI models, and it was Will Smith eating spaghetti, and it looked like a body horror nightmare. Like it was. I'll have to send you the link in the chat later on so you could see it. But like that was only a handful of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and then like to go to like realistic looking videos that we have now, where it's incredibly well defined. It's still kind of weird. It's still a little uncanny valley, but 3 years from now, again, who knows what that's going to be? And I think there are that horror of fundamental truth. Like we all agree on a baseline of truth of what we see is real. With our eyes, if we witness something with our eyes, like if you and I are standing there watching a video or something of like if someone played you a video of the Twin Towers, that at the time when you saw that video, it was real. That's etched in your memory. Like everybody remembers where they were when that happened. But nowadays, if you were to show me a video of a plane like flying into the Statue of Liberty, I wouldn't know if that's real. I don't know if that's trustworthy. I don't know if something that I'm seeing with my own eyes is I'd have to go fact check something that I've seen, which is
Well-
a whole new anxiety.
It's yeah, I think that's something that will. I agree. I think that's going to make its way into horror a great deal, but I don't think we can. I'm not trying to dampen the fear too much. But the people making conspiracy theories up about things like the two towers within a day of
Right.
it happening, the idea that photos and videos may eventually not be admissible in court as evidence because they're too easily manipulated is a legitimate thing, for a legitimate reason for concern. And again, on the topic, is a fantastic start to an adventure. Your character is a defendant or your characters are the defendants in a class action suit or something like that, or not even the defendants, rather they're the victims, and you have all this video evidence, and all of a sudden its validity is called into question. Your case falls through. Now you're going to have to take up a vigilante way of handling the situation. You are the only people that know that the defendants are actually monsters, and so on. You can do that very easily, I think. And again, put the power in the player's hands. What do you do when this technology is not just can be used against you, but you could use it against other people? It can be used as a weapon by you.
Well, I think a lot of games utilize that power as a catharsis, right?
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's like, I don't like my job, so I'm gonna go don some power armor and shoot up a bunch of correction. You know, it's kind of like that. What I love, I think about role playing games is that kind of strange power fantasy that you can get from that. But the weird thing about horror games, it seems, in that front, is that you're actually giving away power. You're putting yourself in maybe a worse situation to make your real life seem better. And I don't know if that's just like on the different, like the opposite end of the spectrum of the cathartic side.
I think that's why plenty of people watch horror movies subconsciously.
Yeah.
It's
I'm
not
not a
necessarily to
psychologist,
make it's not necessarily to make your real life feel better. It's potentially because your real life doesn't necessarily have the excitement that comes with a movie or a game or
Right.
whatever, and that's good, because if you were that terrified all the time, you'd be miserable.
You just redline your meter, so
Yeah.
when you actually come back down, it doesn't seem so bad.
If you live your entire life scared,
Mhm.
eventually you just want to die, and that's not
That's not a great way of being.
No, but it's a very good way for a character to be in an
Yes.
RPG.
I agree.
That's what a character's got to break through the fear to find a reason to go on.
So we've got about 10 minutes left, I think, and I'm just waiting for the thumbs up here from our great tech person, if that's correct. Okay. So we got a couple of questions. I want to just do a kind of like a quick fire Q&A from questions that I'm seeing here that I want to add. We've got like 4 here, so if you've got questions, get them in now. We're gonna do sort of like a lightning round. So like maybe not one sentence answers, but you know what I mean. So first question is from Nicaranta. I'd like to ask a question. How does the panel define player-driven horror, and what is player-driven horror versus mechanics-driven or GM-driven? And we'll do this down the line. So Gabe, we'll start with you.
I think player-driven horror means that you give your player some hard choices and they get to live with the consequences, and sometimes you let them propose these hard choices. So the lesser of two evils or whatever. I don't think there's a problem with mechanics-driven horror. I think that's part of the game in role-playing games. But I do like to think that my games revolve more around choosing what to do and when to do and how to deal with what you do and yourself and the consequences. So for me, it's that. and giving them space to let the story grow towards the consequences that they get to choose.
Okay. Gunilla, how would you define player choice horror versus mechanics driven horror?
I'd say that you have to have some kind of sandboxy or open arena for the characters to act upon. You can't lock them in a room and give them just one objective, something to do. You have to give them choices in objectives, choices in people to meet, choices in roads to travel.
Hmm.
It's
Matthew?
basically the same as every other game where you choose between player-driven or...
Would you say that player choice horror is maybe more difficult, or is it easier than say like a fantasy adventure, player choice fantasy adventure?
It demands a level of improvising, which can be, I think, more difficult in horror because you have to take into account the people's feelings and the feel of the scenes, the theme and the atmosphere in a different way from more realistic or fantasy based games, I think. So you have to be able to improvise and also think that I can't improvise like this because it will be too gross. I can't improvise like that because that will tone it down and make it too meek and silly. Shall we have humor here or should we have more violence? Those kind of choices made on the fly, I think. And everybody has to do that in a player-driven horror game. Everybody has to choose, make those choices. So I think it's more exhausting than playing RuneQuest for 8 hours. I can play Star Wars or RuneQuest for 12 hours, no problem.
That's absolutely fair.
But I can't play a player-driven dreamscape body horror game for more than 4 hours. Everybody will be totally exhausted after that. That's my take.
Matthew, what have you got?
Nothing revolutionary. I am basically agreeing entirely with Gabe.
Excellent. Dee, have you got anything to add? Or?
So I think that for me, the biggest difference between player-driven and player choice horror and mechanics-driven, mechanics like pushed horror is about the way that players buy into the story. So the players are experiencing horror in either situation, but often the mechanic of horror is mechanized in a way that it's random or it's the result of one mechanic cascading down into okay, and now a horror thing happens. Where player choice horror is more about everybody buying into the thought that this atmosphere is scary and we are telling scary stories to each other.
Very good. All right, so I got one more sort of quick fire question for you. Questions for the group. Are there any specific scenarios to any kind of game that really help introduce player-driven horror for those GMs that don't really know where to start? That's a question from Secret Passenger. So free for all, just if you've got a good suggestion for a scenario or a game that you think would be a good entry level for player-driven horror, go for it.
10
Tell us what you got.
candles. Play 10 candles. Run 10 candles for your friends. It's a 3 to 4 hour game at most. It's a one shot. Everybody dies at the end. Can't do it wrong as long as everybody's dead.
I am a firm believer in horror starters for Colts that we've been releasing. So the driver is free, and we've just released the beta PDF for Broken Reflections. And the gist of it, if you don't know, is that the GM has a strong scene set up and then asks the player questions and gives the options. And the players choose what the options that they like, and some of the options are good, such as what do you have in your advantage, which could be a weapon or knowledge or whatever. And some of the options are you picking what kind of horror you want to play. So try that out.
Seems like a nice
Really.
hybrid between the two. So like the GM still setting that kind of like general scenario, but the players can tilt it
Yeah.
in one way or another, rather than like what it sounds like with 10 Candles, which is very narrative, very like everything is explained by the players. So depending on your group and where your level of end, that might be a good like different entry level.
I mean, the GM does still do a lot of, descriptive narration. It's just that certain things are just described by the players, and the more they go. I mean, I ran a game of I love 10 Candles so much. I ran a game of 10 Candles for people who had never played anything other than Dungeons and Dragons. And at first they were like, I don't even know what to do. And then by the end of it, I had an audience of people because I was doing it on Discord, and a bunch of people joined the channel and were just muted and listening because they were just like, oh, this is like a fun, creepy story that people are telling.
I'll pick on a cult scenario, and there's a few, and this isn't player driven in full, but it's Genesis certainly. I'd go for Tapestry of Suburbia for cult. And the reason I'd go for Tapestry of Suburbia is because while it has very clear Nightmare on Elm Street links, your characters at some point in the past colluded to kill someone in the community, and now that person has come back in some haunting form. Which means throughout the scenario, your characters have to deal with the consequences of their actions and possibly put this demon down again or pay for what they've done. My experience of running it, and maybe this is just a personal experience, because the scenario wasn't written in any special way to really push player-driven forward, is just the premise puts the player characters front and center, not only as protagonists, but also as criminals and kind of as antagonists simultaneously. And whether you're going to screw each other over or work together is a big element of that scenario. So I'd recommend Tapestry of Suburbia to anyone who can get their hands on it.
Perfect. I think we have just about hit our time. So I'm gonna do let you guys do a quick outro for yourself. So please, again, tell us who you are, where people can find your work, where people can find you if you're on social media, and anything you want to tell us about stuff you're working on. If you want to break some NDAs, go ahead. No one here's gonna tell. It'll be fine. I'm an independent publisher. I don't give a rat's ass. So go ahead. Let's start. We'll go opposite lane this time. Gabe.
Me, okay. Gabe the Herald from Hamgas, working on Cult Divinity Lost. If you by any chance haven't seen it, we've ran a Kickstarter this year. And we're already releasing the beta PDFs that you can get if you pre-order the books. So go find us in the Kickstarter Backer Kit website.
Gunilla?
Hi, I'm Gunilla Jonsson. I'm presently also working on a Cult Divinity Lost project to be kickstarted a bit further on. It'll be sort of identity dissolving horror in Berlin. Kickstart it when it gets posted.
Me up. I want it. Matthew?
Mo, I've been Matthew Dawkins, and if you want to support me, head on over to MatthewDawkins.com, where you can buy many, many, many games that I've worked on. Head on over to Patreon.com/Matthew Dawkins if you want to play in games that I run. I'm currently running for 13 different groups every month. And Curseborn, which we've been speaking about quite a lot in this session, is available to buy right now on Drive-Thru-RPG. You can get it in print on demand or PDF, along with other fantastic horror games that I have worked on.
D.
I'm Dee. You can find me at daniellelauzon.com. where you can find all of the things that I have worked on, so many things. You can also head over to Drive-Thru RPG following a link from my website and pick up a copy of Curseborn is for sale right now on POD and PDF, and also pick up World Below stuff from Matthew, or pick up some literally anything that I've worked on. I used to joke that my credits list was longer than a CVS receipt, but I think it's even longer than that now. So I don't even
That's a
know
claim.
what to compare it to. But it is, yeah, you can find my stuff there, and also keep an eye out for the Gloomhaven RPG, which we are hoping to get into print and publication next year. So it's going to be
Amazing.
really good.
Well, thank you all. Again, my name is Bear Winters. I'm creative director at Tapham Systems. You can find my work at projectbiomodus.com. I'm currently working on 2 books. One called Shores of Sheol, which is a reverse role Eldritch horror game, and one that I am hoping to go to Kickstarter in July for, which is called Treadpunk, which is an 80s, 90s action movie anti-corporate tank piloting game. So get in a tank and blow up, Spartas on warehouses. That's kind of what you're going to do. You can find me also on Bear Winters on Blue Sky or bear.thr on Instagram. So I am absolutely honored to be able to spend all this time with you all. Thank you so much, especially for our European guests who are probably very late into the night right now. Good night. But again, thank you, and to our gracious hosts as well. Please make sure to stay tuned for all weekend for further discussions, different slots, and I will hopefully see some of you tomorrow. All right. Take care.
Right.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Ryan. You're amazing.